Powerless to stop skyrocketing house prices. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your hashtag recession-proof instant coffee and let's have a look at this article here where our Reserve Bank governor is admitting there's nothing she can do about property price forecasts. Now, naturally, it's Australia, so any property price forecasts are that it will keep shooting to the moon and going sky high. Which, although there are many people out there that are hoping to jump onto the property bandwagon, to get in there and are waiting on the sidelines for a major correction, or maybe they're just hoping for a major correction. The longer I become a YouTuber and ramble about the news, the more cynical I am about this correction ever happening, and the more I would imagine our political leaders would do everything in their power to ensure status quo is maintained. I think the majority of Australians want status quo to be maintained. So let's have a look at this article from Yahoo. Nothing I Can Do, Grim Property Forecast, written by Cameron McElfee. So, Australia's property prices are at record high, with Reserve Bank boss Michelle Bullock conceding there's nothing that I can do. Now, our Reserve Bank governor can only do so much. Really, the Reserve Bank can manipulate the media, or not, but well, is it manipulation? Can talk to the media. It may be manipulative or not. It depends on how you perceive it. And they can adjust the cash rate target. They've got one lever to pull to stimulate the economy. So they could be doing one thing, and then you could have other groups and bodies, maybe politicians, maybe unions, maybe the commercial sector, private business or banks or lobby groups doing something else. Then you could have the psychological perception of the public as well that's completely different, that's shaped by the media. We saw that during the lockdown period when you had the banks were requested by the Reserve Bank to do certain testing for negative rates, and then the media just jumped onto it going, negative rates are coming, and people were making financial decisions on this stuff. So really, for a body that can't even get their own refurbishment estimates for their headquarters correct, they're limited in what they can manipulate with regards to the economy. I would make the argument that the economy is an emergent outcome of a multitude of factors that's more complicated than we can accurately model. Economists may... It's funny. Let's talk about this. Economics is funny. They think they're a science. They think they're a hard science. I remember I went to university and I took some economics subjects. And I'd never done it in high school. And I was shocked that they were pretending like they were a hard science. They were creating all these models and all these things to try and represent the rest of the world. And I remember thinking, what about all personal relationships? What about the psychology there? And I hadn't realized that was a completely different field that was just coming into economics as well, because they had this, traditionally, an assumption that people are rational actors when they're making economic decisions, and that's not the way it is. There's a lot of psychology into it. Now that's starting to come into some modern economic modeling to try and figure out what's going on. But still, here with the Reserve Banks, they've essentially got one lever to push. And here in Australia, it's tied very closely to housing because that's a huge part of our economy. We're not a nation, we're not like the Prussians, a army with a state. We're a bunch of banks with a state. That's what Australia's like. You look at our top 10 in the ASX, the top 10 companies, there's no innovation there. There's no innovative tech companies, no Silicon Valleys. It's a bunch of mining companies and banks. And thank God we've got the mining companies there that were actually producing something that is real. Okay, so don't be all the greenies paying out the mining companies and wanting to destroy them. They're doing something real. Okay, there's something that the world actually needs. So let's jump back here, because that's how I see Australia now. I'm getting more cynical in my old age. Home prices climbed higher in September across all capital, city and regional markets, with Melbourne now surpassing its peak in 2022. And I thought we'd just bring up over here from the ABS. This is the total value of dwellings from the last, 2020. Oh boy, there you go. It's skyrocketing. But here's an interesting one from Trading Economics, guys. This is, I'll bring that over here. This is home ownership, and the furthest this can go back is just in a decade, 10 years. We can see with 67.5% of home ownership, it's decreased. Not that much. It's only at 66%, but it's only been 10 years. Not even that. Well, in this data, 8 years. So that's a concerning trend. You want to have more people owning homes. That's the best thing you can do for your retirement is own a home, even if you're on the pension. So, PropTrack Home Price Index shows Australia's median home price rose 0.5% in September and has been climbing every month since rates were cut in February. Interest rates have been reduced by 25 basis points in February, May and August, taking the official cash rate from 4.35 to 3.60%. And if I bring up, here we go, we've got the RBA cash rate. Now, here's the thing, everyone. Did I said 3.6, not 3. Is it 3.35? Wait a minute, No, it's 3.6. There were predictions of 3.35 that never came off. Look at this chart. Look at the period from 2010 back to, the early 90s, okay? You see that range where it's in? That is normal, okay? 3% was considered a normal rate because it gives you room to act in case of an emergency. What we have lived through since essentially the GFC has been rates going down, 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 and then you had a once-in-a-100-year event that occurred, hopefully, 100-year event, knock wood, and that's why we had a cash rate of 0.1. So if you're young and thinking 0.1 is normal, it is not. It is not normal by any measure. Okay, just remember that. It's not normal. Don't expect it to come back again at 0.1% in your lifetime. If it does, shit's hit the fan. Honestly, things have gone wrong if it does. Then we'll have a whole bunch of other things to worry about. Property prices are now 6.2% higher than a year ago. When pressed about monetary policy's role in rising house prices, Ms. Bullock said the property market was a difficult situation for all and she was not confident of a short-term fix. Well, we should probably calculate housing more appropriately into the inflation rate because it's a funny way that they calculated in inflation rate. It's not really completely captured how it impacts people day to day, but then that would have, drastic impacts on the decisions made by the Reserve Bank. I would argue perhaps, here's the challenge, perhaps affordable housing needs to be part of the mandate of the Reserve Bank. But what do you want? Do you want economic stability or do you want affordable housing? What do the majority of people in Australia want? Economic stability. What will they talk about to their friends? Oh, we want affordable housing. It's bullshit, okay? It's like everyone who says they want Australian made, but when they go to Bunnings, they buy the Chinese manufactured item because it's a third of the price. I'm not confident it's going to make any impact for the next 2 years, she grimly forecast. The bottom line is that all I can do is keep inflation low and stable, and I keep employment as strong as possible because that gives people the best opportunity to get jobs, to be able to possibly get into the housing market. Here's the thing. She's talking about keeping inflation low and stable. This means prices are still going up. What's the inflation rate here? Hang on, let me... does the RBA have it on their website or the... Where is it? Yep, they've got it here. 2.1% is the consumer price index. Sure, there are other measures of inflation. It feels like 2.1% is complete bullshit when you see how much it costs. Today, this morning, here's story time again. I wanted to get a coffee. I dropped the kids off at school, so I went to the 7-Eleven to get my coffee. And I'm recording in the afternoon. That's why I don't have my my hashtag not sponsored coffee today. But I thought, oh crap, there's cars everywhere. I won't get a park. I'll put some petrol in the tank, even though the fuel gauge was full. So I thought, screw it, I'll put $1 in. So I go there, put the petrol nozzle in there and stand there for 30 seconds, and then I look, and there's $10 of petrol in there. It barely moved. The pump barely turned on. What am I paying for? I'm paying for some air, the gas of the petrol that went into the tank. It was nothing, $10. I'm showing my age. I'm showing my age. I was stunned at how quickly it started costing. That's one of the advantages. I can see why people go to the electric cars. I mean, it's not to save the environment. Okay, let's be honest. That's maybe why people pretend why they buy it. It's because they want to save money and they get a nice big fat tax write-off or fringe benefit write-off from the government. That's the reason. I'm glad I'm working from home actually and not having to commute all the time. That cost would add up. Back when I was doing uni in Brisbane and living down the Gold Coast, that was 2 hours of driving every day. That'd be bloody expensive. And Spurlock said, while rising house prices were a part of the transmission mechanism of monetary policy, and lower interest rates could lead to increased house prices, the central bank didn't target house prices specifically. Yes, it's not part of their mandate. It's not how they measure things. New Zealand is a bit different. It's part of them. It's part of them. I understand it's part of they need to consider it in their decision making. But here's the thing. We're not going to get negative inflation. We're not going to get deflation. So if you're thinking house prices are going to crash, relative to our fiat currency, it's not going to crash. I'm just noticing for all the people that bought in gold and silver 5 years, now's the opportunity. Look at the prices. Compare that to house prices. It's probably not as fantastic as you'd hoped, considering how high house prices have gone up, but it's better than dollars, at least this time. For those of you that were asking, all of my gold has been turned into physical assets that you can see around me. I think it's in big chunk of it's in steel, in structural steel. Not the same return, but hey, I need a house. I don't actually think most reasonable people view the rise in house prices as a good outcome, she said. Having said that, there's nothing I can personally do about it. We don't target house prices. Ms. Bullock's call followed Australian Bureau of Statistics figures that shows a disappointing August approval rate. The number of approved dwellings fell 6% in August after an 8.2% slump in housing in July. Now, I've got some interesting anecdotal stories from housing, or just from the construction industry at my 7-Eleven. They were doing a whole lot of renovation there, and I was asking the fit-out guys, why aren't you doing it at nighttime? We used to do a lot of retail design. We did Lorna Jane's shops all around the country, and often the boys would be working through the night to turn it over real quick. And here their Lend-Lease was there doing this refurbishment at the 7-Eleven. It looked like it was part of a new food services offering in the middle of the day. And I mean, that alone, that shows you that's a cost-saving mechanism there. I found it odd. I found it quite strange. And you've got, what was it also? Washing machine broke. The repairman came. There were 2 of them. They were telling me normally it would only be 1. It's dead quiet. They'd both been made redundant from another place and were working there. And then I'm talking to other builders, tradies who are flat out. It really is an odd economy at the moment, depending on what sector you're in. So we'll have to see. And approval ratings are down. I mean, it's getting near the end of the year. But still, we're not going to meet those targets the government is ambitiously hoping for, those houses that they want to build. The drastic drop in housing approvals was due to lack of approved apartments and townhouses, which fell 8.1% to 5,408 for August. According to AMP economists, is that how you pronounce it? Tuesday's fall was disappointing, with Australia on track to build just 191,000 new houses per year based on the quarterly approval rating. It's still a long way to go from hitting the 240,000 per annum target in the National Housing Accord, she said. Yeah, anyone in the industry knew that was bullshit. We all knew that was just... This is politicians who are making claims and making promises that are detached from reality. Because it's a challenge, because you've got legislation constantly changing. You've got it takes time to build up the skill base to build houses. We can use a whole multitude of different methods to get housing out there, but you still need to get the materials. You need to get the trades. You need to get the sites prepared. You need to drive stuff around, and that's getting more expensive too. I wonder what the impact of the fuel excise has been on house prices. If you really break apart a house construction, how much it costs in taxes. I've got a few suggestions for how to make housing more affordable. I should do some videos on them. One is we need to create incentives to create cheaper, smaller houses on bigger blocks that people can build on. Because for developers, there's so much work in building a smaller house. In many ways, there's a lot of work that, well, is the same as building a larger house. You get a bigger return on the bigger product, but then you've got people in more debt to try and get the bigger product, or you've got people priced out of the market. Anyway, the target is necessary to reduce the accumulated housing shortage over the years, which we estimate to be between 200,000 to 300,000 dwellings. She said apartments were now being approved at 25% below the peak level of between 2017 and 2021. We'd have to look at what the number of approvals are by foreign owners. There's one point. I don't have to add the chart here. I don't have the chart here anymore. No, that's not it. No, I'll have to get it. Where foreign investment made up 90% of all building approvals in Australia, which, well, you need for getting stock built. But people don't want foreign ownership. So the whole thing is messy. There's no easy solution. From 15 to 17, apartments and townhouses accounted for close to 60% of total approvals, but their share was now only 40%. In 2023, the Albanese government laid out an ambitious plan to build 1.2 million new homes across the nation by 2029 in an effort to tackle the lack of supply that is crippling affordability. While Australia is still trying to play catch-up due to the lack of supply, the total dwelling approvals are roughly in line with population growth. Ms. Bullock said governments were starting to recognise the problem with housing was supply, and they were trying to boost it. I've said a number of times before that the problem in the housing market is we are in a structural deficit of supply. Okay, let's have a bit of a chat about this one, eh? I mean, nothing new here. I think some people may be learning the fact that our Reserve Bank doesn't take account of house pricing in their decision-making process. Maybe that should change. Maybe that should change. But how many people want to get in the housing market compared to how many people are in the housing market or want to maintain the status quo? We need a cultural shift here. From the old not my backyard crowd not wanting to have particular developments around them, to landlords wanting to maintain their current ideological position, so they'll vote for crazy left-wing socialist parties just to maintain the value of their assets intentionally. Remember, years back now, as a city councillor, Green City Councillor member here was calling Ipswich City Council to try and manipulate opinion against a development. They were going to build some low-cost housing that happened to be near an indigenously significant site. When they'd had archaeologists there, they went and investigated the site where they were building. There was no proposals, but there was all this push against it. So someone who was representing people in a different city with houses in his catchment, millions of dollars, didn't want cheap starter homes out in the switch. It ain't going to change. Don't wait for it to crash and come down cheaper, guys. You tell me what you think. I'll see you next time.